I thought marrying a mafia boss would save me from my father. I was wrong. It just taught me that some prisons have better furniture. My name is Sophia Hartley. I'm 24 years old. And I've spent my entire life running from one dangerous man straight into the arms of another. This is the story of how I escaped an abusive father by marrying into the mafia. How I traded bruises for silk sheets. Violence for control disguised as protection. But this isn't just a story. This is about the psychology behind why smart, capable women keep choosing the same type of dangerous man over and over again. Just with a different face. If you've ever looked at your relationship history and asked yourself, why do I keep attracting the same person? If you've ever wondered why you feel safer in chaos than peace, you're about to understand why. Because I lived it. And I'm going to show you the pattern I couldn't see until it was too late. The abusive father. I don't remember a time when my father wasn't angry. Some fathers yell when they've had a bad day. When work is stressful. When the bills pile up. Mine yelled when he woke up. When breakfast was cold. When I breathed too loudly while he watched television. By the time I was 16, I'd memorized the sound of his footsteps on the stairs. Heavy and fast meant hide in my room and lock the door. Slow and deliberate meant something worse. It meant he'd been drinking, and he was coming to tell me exactly what a disappointment I was. My mother left when I was 8. I used to think she was a coward for abandoning me. Leaving me alone with him. Now I'm 24, and I understand, she wasn't a coward. She was a survivor. She just couldn't save both of us. The physical violence started when I was 12. Nothing that left marks where teachers could see them. He was smart about that. A shove into the wall that looked like I'd tripped. A grip on my arm that left bruises I'd cover with long sleeves. Doors slammed in my face. Objects thrown just close enough to scare me but not close enough to explain to a hospital. But the psychological abuse? That was constant. He controlled everything. What I wore. Where I went. Who do I speak to? He told me I was lucky he let me stay in his house. That no man would ever want me because I was damaged. That I'd end up alone if I ever tried to leave. And I believed him. Because when someone tells you you're worthless every single day for 16 years, eventually your brain stops arguing. I wasn't allowed to work. He said it was because he didn't want people talking about his daughter serving coffee like some charity case. The real reason? If I had money, I could leave. I finished high school online because he pulled me out of public school when a teacher asked about a bruise on my wrist. Too many questions, he said. I had no friends. No phone, he said I didn't need one. No car. No bank account in my name. I was a prisoner in a 2-bedroom house in Queens. And I spent every single night planning my escape. I saved money whenever I could. Coins from his jacket pockets. Bills I'd find on the couch. I kept it hidden in a box of tampons because I knew he'd never look there. By my 23rd birthday, I had $947. Not enough to disappear. But enough to dream. And then, everything changed. The debt collectors arrive. It happened on a Tuesday night in March. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I heard the knock. Not a knock, actually. 3 heavy pounds on the door that made the frame shake. My father froze. I saw it, the way his face went pale. The way his hands started trembling. He knew who it was. He opened the door, and 3 men walked in. They weren't police. Police knock and wait. These men entered like they owned the place. And according to the paperwork one of them dropped on our coffee table, they did. The debt revealed. The man in the center, tall, 50s, graying at the temples, spoke in this calm, almost bored voice. Vincent Hartley. You owe the Marchetti family $183,000. You've missed 4 payments. We're here to discuss repayment options. My father started stammering. Making excuses. He'd borrowed the money 6 months ago from some loan shark connected to the Marchetti family. He thought he could double it at a poker game. Instead, he lost it all in one night. The interest rate was 30% compounding monthly. The debt had ballooned from $120,000 to $183,000 in 6 months. And these men were done waiting. The threat. The tall man turned to me. "That your daughter?" My father nodded. "Pretty girl," the man said. "Not flirty. Just observational." Like he was appraising furniture. Then he turned back to my father. "You've got 72 hours to come up with 50,000. After that, we start taking collateral. Your house. Your car." He glanced at me again. "Whatever has value." I wasn't stupid. I knew what whatever has value meant. I'd heard the stories. Girls who disappeared when their families couldn't pay their debts. Girls who ended up in basements or shipping containers or worse. My father was going to get me killed. Or worse than killed. And then, 3 days later, someone made me a different offer. The offer. Luca arrives. He came alone. No bodyguards. No threats. Just a single knock at the door at 7 p.m. on Friday. I opened it, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. He was younger than I expected. Maybe 32. Tall, well over 6 feet. Dark hair, dark eyes, expensive suit that fit like it was tailored specifically for him. He looked at me, and I felt exposed. Like he could see every bruise my father had ever left, even the ones that had healed. "Sophia Hartley?" he asked. I nodded. "My name is Luca Marchetti. I'd like to speak with you. Alone." The proposal. We sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks away. He ordered black coffee. Didn't touch it. I ordered nothing. Couldn't afford it. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents. My father's debt. The loan agreement. Payment history. And, weirdly, a background check on me. He'd investigated me. My entire life. High school records. Medical history. Even a note about the bruise a teacher had reported when I was 14. I should have been furious. Instead, I just felt tired. "Your father owes my family a significant amount of money," Luca said. "He can't pay. I could take your house, but it's worth maybe 40,000. That leaves 143,000 unaccounted for. So what do you want?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "You." "The terms." "Marry me," he said. 6 months. Live as my wife. Be seen with me in public. Attend events. Play the role. And after 6 months? You're free to leave. The debt is forgiven. Your father keeps his house. You get $50,000 as a settlement. No strings. I stared at him. "Why?" I asked. "You could have anyone. Why would you pay nearly $200,000 for a fake wife?" He leaned back in his chair. "Because I'm tired of women who want something from me," he said. "Money. Status. Protection. Power. They lie about their motives. Pretend they care when really they're calculating what they can extract. You'll be here because you have to be. That's honest. I respect honesty. I should have run. I should have seen the red flags waving like surrender banners. But all I could think was, this is my way out. Out of my father's house. Out of the violence. Out of the cage I'd been living in for 23 years. So I said yes. We signed the papers 4 days later. The marriage. The wedding and first days. The wedding wasn't a wedding. It was a transaction. A judge's office. 2 witnesses I'd never met. No flowers. No ring. Well, he gave me one later, but not that day. I wore a white blouse and black pants. He wore a suit. We said I do like we were signing a lease. And then I moved into his house. I'd expected something dark. Gothic. Like a villain's mansion. Instead, it was beautiful. A brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. High ceilings. Hardwood floors. Windows that let in so much light I had to squint the first morning. My room was on the second floor. King-sized bed. Ensuite bathroom. A walk-in closet that was bigger than my old bedroom. And a lock on the door. From the inside. The small axe. For the first 2 weeks, I barely saw him. He'd leave before I woke up. Come back after I'd gone to bed. When we passed in the hallway, he'd nod. That was it. But I noticed things. The coffee pot would be ready in the morning, already set to brew at 7 a.m., exactly when I got up. It was the same brand I used to buy with my saved money, the cheap kind from the corner store. How did he know? There was a stack of books on my nightstand one day. All genres I'd mentioned liking when he'd asked me about hobbies during one of our 3 total conversations. He never mentioned leaving them. They just appeared. When I told him I had nightmares about my father, that I kept waking up thinking I was back in that house, he installed a better lock on my bedroom door the next day. From the inside. So I could lock him out if I wanted. He never asked what the nightmares were about. Never pushed for details. Just fixed the problem. And slowly, so slowly, I didn't notice it happening, I started to relax. The shift, comfort becomes dependence. Month 2, things changed. He started eating breakfast with me. Not every day. Just, sometimes. We'd sit in silence mostly. He'd read the newspaper. I'd drink coffee. It was nice. Then he started asking me to dinner. Events he had to attend. Charity galas. Business functions. You don't have to, he'd say. But it would help maintain appearances. I always said yes. He'd introduce me as his wife with this pride in his voice. Like I was something valuable. Something worth showing off. No one had ever looked at me like that before. Like I mattered. And when other men would try to talk to me, Luca would appear at my elbow. Not aggressive. Just present. A hand on the small of my back. A quiet, excuse us. It felt protective. It felt safe. It felt like love. Month 3, I realized I was in trouble. Not because he was cruel. Because he wasn't. Not because he hurt me. Because he didn't. I was in trouble because I was falling for him. And I had no idea that I was repeating the same pattern that had trapped me with my father. It was a Wednesday night when I finally saw it. We'd had dinner together, something that was becoming more frequent. He'd made pasta. We'd talked about nothing important. It was domestic. Afterwards, I went to my room and tried to read, but I couldn't focus. Because I kept thinking about how safe I felt. How protected. And then it hit me. Luca hadn't saved me from my father. He'd bought me. My father owed him money, and instead of taking the house or, worse, he took me. He could have just eliminated my father's debt. Could have written it off. Could have done anything. But he chose this. Chose to put me in a position where I'd be grateful to him. Where I'd see him as my rescuer. And I'd fallen for it completely. Every small kindness, the coffee, the books, the lock on my door, they weren't love. They were control disguised as care. He didn't ask me to leave my room in the mornings. He just made sure I'd want to by setting up the coffee. He didn't force me to attend events. He just framed it as a choice when really, I was contractually obligated to play the role of his wife. He didn't lock me in. He gave me a lock I could control. Which made me feel safe. Which made me stay. It was brilliant, actually. My father controlled me with fear and violence, 0-0. Luca controlled me with kindness and the illusion of choice. Different methods. Same result. I was in a cage. Just a prettier one. The decision. Month 4, I stopped waiting for 6 months to be over. I started planning my real escape. Because I finally understood, I hadn't married Luca to escape my father. I'd married him because some part of me felt comfortable with control. Because my brain was wired to associate love with someone who made all the decisions. Someone who protected me by limiting my world. And if I stayed, I'd never break that pattern. So when month 6 ended, I did something I'd never done before. I chose myself. I left. Now let me show you the psychology behind what just happened. Because this story? It's not unique. It's a pattern. And it's probably showing up in your life too. The psychology lesson. No music. Just voice, more educational tone, but still personal. Here's what I didn't understand when I was living through it. That story I just told you? Psychologists have a name for what I was doing. It's called repetition compulsion. And it's why so many of us keep choosing the same type of person over and over again, even when we know they're bad for us. Lesson 1: Repetition compulsion. Repetition compulsion is when you unconsciously recreate traumatic situations from your past, hoping that this time, you'll get a different outcome. I grew up with a father who controlled every aspect of my life. Who told me I was worthless? Who made me believe I couldn't survive without him? So what did I do the first chance I got to escape? I married a man who controlled my life differently. Who made me feel like I needed his protection? Who created a situation where leaving felt impossible? Different packaging. Same pattern. Here's why this happens. Your brain gets wired by early experiences. If you grow up in chaos, your nervous system learns that chaos is normal. When you're finally in a peaceful situation, it feels wrong. Unfamiliar. Uncomfortable. So you subconsciously seek out what's familiar, even if what's familiar is painful. In my case, my brain had learned that love looks like someone making decisions for me. That safety means someone bigger and stronger controlling my environment. So when Luca showed up and did exactly that, controlled my environment, made decisions for my own good, positioned himself as my protector, it felt like love. It wasn't. It was my trauma recognizing a familiar pattern and mistaking it for home. 3 signs you're repeating a pattern. 1. Your relationships feel different on the surface, but they end the same way. Different person, same problems. 2. You're attracted to people who remind you of someone from your past, even if that someone hurt you. You might not see the resemblance at first, but the behavior patterns are identical. 3. You feel more comfortable in intensity than in peace. Calm, healthy relationships feel boring or wrong to you. If any of those resonated, you're not broken. You're not making bad choices on purpose. You're just following a script your brain wrote when you were too young to know better. But here's the good news: once you see the pattern, you can change it. Lesson 2: Trauma bonding. The second thing I didn't understand, I wasn't falling in love with Luca. I was trauma bonding. Trauma bonding happens when someone creates both your pain and your relief from pain. Luca didn't just save me from my father. He controlled my father's debt. He could have forgiven it at any time. But instead, he used it as leverage to get what he wanted, me. So my brain associated him with safety, even though he was the one holding the threat. In abusive relationships, trauma bonding looks like this. Your partner creates a crisis, yells at you, threatens to leave, gives you the silent treatment. Then they rescue you from the crisis they created, apologize, bring you flowers, tell you they can't live without you. Your nervous system experiences the relief as love. Because they're the source of both the pain and the comfort, your brain bonds to them intensely. It's not love. It's your survival instinct attaching to the person who controls whether you feel safe or afraid. Here's how to tell the difference between trauma bonding and actual love. Trauma bond, you feel like you need them to survive. Like you can't function without them. The thought of leaving creates panic. Actual love, you want them in your life, but you know you'd be okay without them. You feel more yourself with them, not less. Trauma bond, the highs are euphoric, and the lows are devastating. It's an emotional roller coaster. Actual love, it's steady. Consistent. Sometimes even boring, in a good way. Trauma bond, you find yourself constantly defending them to other people. Making excuses for their behavior. Actual love, you don't have to justify the relationship to yourself or others. It just works. With Luca, I thought the intensity meant it was real. That the way my heart raced when he walked in a room meant I loved him. It didn't. It meant my nervous system was on high alert because some part of me recognized danger. I just mistook danger for passion. So how do you actually break this pattern? Because recognizing it is step one. But recognition doesn't automatically fix it. Here's what's actually helped me. First, identify your specific pattern. Write down your last 3 to 5 significant relationships. Not just romantic, friendships, family dynamics, work relationships. Look for behavioral patterns, not surface traits. Don't write they were all tall with dark hair. Write they were all emotionally unavailable but would give me just enough attention to keep me hoping. Or, they all made decisions for me, and I felt relieved not to have to choose. Or, they all needed rescuing, and I felt valuable when I could help them. Once you see your pattern written out, it becomes harder to deny. Second, notice what feels comfortable versus what feels good. If someone's behavior makes you anxious, but you feel drawn to them anyway? That's your pattern, not attraction. If someone treats you with consistent kindness and it feels suspicious or boring? That's your trauma talking. Comfort isn't the same as healthy. Sometimes healthy feels uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. Third, sit with the discomfort when someone treats you well. When someone respects your boundaries without you having to fight for them, sit with how weird that feels. When someone is kind without expecting something in return, notice how suspicious you are, and sit with it anyway. When a relationship is calm and stable, resist the urge to create drama because chaos feels more normal. Your brain will scream that something's wrong. That this person is too good to be true. That you should run. Don't listen. Sit with the discomfort. It gets easier. I'm still working on this. I didn't magically heal because I recognized the pattern. I still catch myself attracted to men who feel challenging. Who makes me work for their attention? The difference is, now I recognize it. And I choose not to act on it. That's not perfect. But it's progress. If this story resonated with you, it's probably because you've lived some version of it. Maybe not with a mafia boss. Maybe your version involved a boss who made you feel valued by overworking you. Or a friend who made you feel special by isolating you from everyone else. Or a partner who protected you by controlling who you could see. Different details. Same pattern. I'm creating an entire series on this, the psychology behind dark romance tropes and how they show up in real relationships. Next week, he kidnapped me and called up protection, how to spot control disguised as care. I'll tell you about the time someone convinced me that jealousy meant love, and what that reveals about possessiveness versus actual care. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Because these patterns are invisible when you're inside them. But once you learn to recognize them, you can't unsee them. And that's when real change becomes possible. Comment below and tell me, have you ever escaped one bad situation only to end up in another that felt different but ended the same way? What pattern did you finally recognize in yourself? Or, if you're just here for the dark romance and the storytelling, tell me what you want to see next. Enemies to lovers? Kidnapping gone wrong? Forced proximity with a dangerous stranger? I read every single comment. Let's talk about it. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.